Tonight, universities under fire. From DEI to anti-Semitism, the Trump administration cracks down on higher education. The Ivy League pushback with billions in federal funding on the line. Plus, President Trump's bold statement on Easter.
I think this proclamation is historic.
The message that's putting faith in the spotlight. And a show of force in the Middle East. The United States sends more firepower to the region as nuclear talks with Iran hang in the balance. Plus, balancing bacteria?
There are bacteria that drive addictions to like nicotine, to alcohol.
How your gut health can affect your mental health. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A clash of the titans, Harvard versus the Trump White House. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation in Washington. I'm John Jessup. Well, with $9 billion in federal funding on the line, America's oldest and most respected college challenging the Trump administration and refusing to bend to White House demands to change school policies as a part of a broader campaign against anti-Semitism and campus protests. CBN Washington correspondent Michelle London is following the effort targeting some of America's premier colleges and universities. Michelle.
Well, John, this week, Harvard President Alan Garber declared the university would not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. In response, the administration froze more than $2 billion in Harvard's federal grants, while also threatening $60 million in contracts. I spoke with Jared Fillity, a senior counsel at the Lawfare Project, who told me the Ivy League has the wealth to put up a fight.
I believe it had over $54 billion in endowments as of last summer. It has the funds to fight the Trump administration all the way. So we will absolutely see a legal challenge that will probably wind its way to the Supreme Court at some point. Now, Harvard wants to continue receiving the benefit of U.S. taxpayer dollars and not go down its endowment.
All the president is asking, don't break federal law, and then you can have your federal funding. I think the president is also begging a good question. More than $2 billion out the door to Harvard when they have a more than $50 billion endowment. Why are the American taxpayers subsidizing a university that has billions of dollars in the bank already? And we certainly should not be funding a place where such grave anti-Semitism exists.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt there. Some requirements on the president's to-do list include reporting foreign students who commit conduct violations, ensure Harvard's academic departments have diverse viewpoints, and ending all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. This feud working through the Ivy League goes back to 2024 when student protests over the war in Gaza took over buildings, disrupted classes, and often resulted in violence. Columbia University eventually complied to the administration's demands rather than face billions in cuts. Meanwhile, federal funding has been paused at the University of Pennsylvania, Brown, Princeton, and Northwestern. Also, former President Barack Obama is praising Harvard, calling Trump's demands unlawful and an attempt to stifle academic freedom. Meanwhile, President Trump is suggesting Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it doesn't change course. John?
All right. Michelle London reporting. Thank you, Michelle. Well, Tyler Coward joins us now. He is the lead counsel for government affairs at the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, also known as FIRE. Tyler, welcome to you. So the White House says that this is a fight against anti-Semitism on college campuses, citing anti-Israel protests and harassment of Jewish students, as Michelle just reported back in 2024. How do you see this?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. The Trump administration is right that there are a lot of our higher ed institutions that likely did violate Title VI by not responding to known incidents of unprotected speech or unprotected conduct, including violence targeted against Jewish students because of their Jewish identity. And when institutions failed to respond to those known instances, it is very likely that they violated Title VI. The problem here is that the Trump administration is abandoning existing Title VI procedures to find institutions non-compliant and are relying on ad hoc determinations and contract cancellations from the Department of Education, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the General Services Administration to unilaterally cancel these contracts, to essentially strong-arm these institutions to adopting the Trump administration's preferred policies.
We'll get to what you just hit on later. I want to just drill down on free speech. It often includes offensive speech or even hateful speech, things that the majority of us might find repugnant. But free speech isn't necessarily unlimited, especially when it comes to threats or intimidation. So what process should be followed when a school is accused of fostering a hostile environment for Jewish students? You just mentioned Title VI.
That's exactly right. Title VI is the civil rights law at issue here. And if an institution is accused of falling out of compliance with Title VI by having a hostile environment for a student based on their race, national origin, or ethnicity, then usually the Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Education opens an investigation. The institution gets to see the evidence that OCR has collected against them, and they can contest those in some sort of administrative hearing. And if the institution thinks that, yes, I think we're not compliant, oftentimes they enter into what's called a resolution agreement after an opportunity to contest the claims in an administrative proceeding, or the Department of Justice brings litigation against an institution in federal court, where there are obviously a whole sorts of due process protections afforded to institutions in those legal proceedings that are just absent from these ad hoc contract cancellations.
So the Trump administration is also targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion programs known as DEI, but they're also looking at rooting out what it sees as ideological bias. Harvard and its supporters see that as a threat to its academic freedom. So, Tyler, where's the line between protecting students and preserving expression on campus? And what are the risks from both points of view, from the White House point of view, which is protecting Jewish students, and bowing to political pressure, which is Harvard's point of view?
Well, the letter that the Trump administration sent to Harvard a few days ago is really unprecedented. We've been tracking federal government attempts to strong-arm institutions to adopting speech-restrictive policies or policies that restrict due process rights of students since our inception. We've not seen a letter quite like this. We've never once seen an administration say, hey, you might have an anti-Semitism problem here. Oh, by the way, you have to account for viewpoint diversity in every single one of your departments, unrelated to civil rights enforcement. So this is an extraordinary escalation that we've just never seen before.
All right, Tyler Coward with the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, also known as FIRE. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and shedding some insight on this very complex issue.
Thank you.
Well, this funding debate over Harvard and other colleges and universities is just one of several flashpoints facing the White House, from tariffs and foreign policy to a controversial deportation case and the president's Holy Week message. It has been a busy week already, and it's just Tuesday. CBN White House correspondent Kelly Wright joins us now from the White House. Kelly, I know you attended today's briefing. Did we learn anything new about the ongoing tariffs?
Yeah, John, in fact, we did. As you know, the president has been stating that 75 nations want to do a deal with the United States, in other words, negotiate for reciprocals and fair trade. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, did say that 15 nations are already at the table conducting some sort of deal. But she talked about China, and everyone still has their eye on China since that's the second largest economy in the world. And the president had spoken with her before today's briefing in the Oval Office, basically stating that it's time for China to make a deal with the United States. Also adding that China needs to make a deal with the United States. The United States doesn't need to make a deal with them. Here's what the White House press secretary added to that conversation.
And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way, they need our money. So the president, again, has made it quite clear that he's open to a deal with China, but China needs to make a deal with the United States of America.
And of course, John, as we know, China is currently trying to broker some deals with Vietnam and other nations, but the president remains adamant that he believes China must come to the table and will soon, sometime in the near future. John?
Yeah, we're seeing what could be a realigning of trade alliances out there. It started off as a gruesome Holy Week in Ukraine. What's the White House saying about developments in brokering a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia?
So the president's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, has been negotiating with Ukraine and Russia. And the president and the White House press secretary said that they believe the talks are ongoing and that the president believes that Russia will come to the table. They need to get a ceasefire and then ultimately make a deal between Zelensky and Putin of Russia, getting both of these countries together, both of these leaders together to stop annihilating each other, most particularly those in the Ukraine. But going back to what you were stating about on Sunday, you'll recall that right on the heels of Steve Witkoff having a meeting with Russia and Ukraine, Palm Sunday, Ukraine was bombed, and even a church was included in that bomb. Some people are stating that Russia committed acts of war crimes with that by bombing a church. John.
You know, this ongoing case with the mistaken case, rather, of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from El Salvador. What's the White House saying about that today?
Look, Caroline Leavitt was appalled. That's what she's saying. She says, I'm appalled that we would still be being asked this question about a man who has known ties to MS-13 and is an MS-13 member. She wanted to state that this is not an innocent man just trying to get back home to Maryland. This is a man who, because he was with MS-13 and entered this country illegally in the first place, and even has some occasion to work with the gangs, is someone that should not be considered, you know, an American boy, if you will, an American boy who's coming back home to his family. So that's one of the things that they're looking at, and she was appalled by the media still going down this path with this story. Before
we go, Kelly, the president made that bold proclamation about Holy Week. You and I were talking about that in the newsroom. What kind of events will the White House have in observance of this special week, the most holy week for Christians?
Yeah, so starting tomorrow night, they will have a White House Easter dinner, and that will be attended by notables like Franklin Graham, Jensen Franklin, and Greg Laurie. And they'll also have some singing on Thursday when Franklin Graham addresses everyone with the fact that they're celebrating Easter at the White House with prayer and worship. John.
Correspondent, thank you so much for always keeping us up to date with all the goings-on at the White House.
Thank you, John.
Well, up next, a showdown with Iran. The United States sends more firepower to the region ahead of ongoing talks about Tehran's nuclear program. That's next on Faith Nation. Welcome back. More military movement in the Middle East tonight. A second U.S. aircraft carrier has arrived in the region just days before Saturday's nuclear talks with Iran. The deployment comes as apparent U.S. airstrikes continue to hit Iran-backed Houthi forces in Yemen. The Trump administration says it's part of a strategy to pressure Iran, with President Trump warning he could strike the Islamic regime if no deal is reached. Both sides say talks are moving forward, but with Iran enriching uranium close to weapons grade levels, the stakes are extremely high. Meanwhile, still no breakthrough in negotiations to restore ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza. In Jerusalem, thousands gathered at the Western Wall for a priestly blessing, praying for peace and the safe return of the remaining hostages.
This year especially, I wanted to come down here and see how the blessing comes down and hopefully will help the hostages and the entire nation of Israel that is under extreme duress, especially this year. And we hope that the prayer will help everybody have a great year, a safe year, and a healthy year.
And tonight, a diplomatic clash between Israel and France. Last week, French President Emmanuel Macron said he hopes to recognize a Palestinian state by June. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded, saying the move would be, quote, a huge reward for terrorism. Well, to the tragedy unfolding in Nigeria, at least 40 people have been killed in a deadly overnight attack on a Christian farming community. Local officials say the gunmen, believed to be Muslim herders known as Fulani, struck without warning, catching victims off guard, including children and the elderly. Nigeria's president has ordered an investigation as pressure mounts on his government to stop the spread of violence. Coming up, is your gut the key to a healthy mind? The new research revealing the powerful link between bacteria and brain health after the break. Welcome back. About 50 million Americans are living with a mental health condition. Roughly 6 million of them have dementia. Well, if you're no stranger to CBN News, you know for years we've been reporting on the connection between gut bacteria and brain health. And now, as CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson explains, new discoveries show how we can take simple steps to protect both our bodies and our minds.
This new research shows species of bacteria common in the gut have been found in healthy human brains. This leads scientists to now believe about half the cells in our bodies are human, with the other half being made up of bacteria and other microbes. For the last 10 years, Dr. Stephen Gundry has recommended patients balance their gut microbiome between good and bad bacteria in the intestines. In addition to better overall physical health, he also noticed the bonus of improved mental health.
Almost everybody, either without my prompting, after 6 months or so, would say, you know, I've antidepressants, I don't need them anymore. And one of the things that almost every one of them said was, I won't believe them. I had no idea, how much fog I was in.
This prompted Dr. Gundry to look closer at the link between our brain health and bacteria in our bodies. In his new book, The Gut-Brain Paradox, Gundry reveals his discovery of specific intestinal bacteria that affect the production of neurotransmitters, our body's chemical messengers.
But there are absolutely different bacteria in our gut that associate with being depressed or being anxious, number one, and we can identify those bacteria, and they get out of balance with the other bacteria in our gut.
The same is true when it comes to our cravings.
There are bacteria, alterations in the microbiome in our intestines that drive addictions to like nicotine, to alcohol, to even hard drugs like morphine or fentanyl. And what's really fascinating is you can actually identify these bacteria.
Gundry's research also included diet's impact on Alzheimer's disease. In a study comparing Nigerians carrying the APOE4 so-called Alzheimer's gene to people in America with it, fewer Nigerians developed Alzheimer's.
The diet between these two areas was completely different. And so it was the diet of these people that made the difference in the outcome.
Gundry says a standard American diet can perforate or tear the intestines, allowing substances to leak out, triggering chronic inflammation, including in the brain.
Parkinson's, for instance, comes from the gut, not starting in the brain. Alzheimer's comes from the gut, not starting in the brain. And so we've really done a complete 180 flip over how we should go about, preventing these diseases and how we should go about treating these diseases.
Recommendations from that flip include consuming probiotic foods and drinks, which contain live bacteria and are often fermented. Next, feed that bacteria high-fiber foods like fruits and vegetables and whole grains. Gundry issues a warning, however, about foods containing lectins like tomatoes, wheat, and beans.
I can heal the wall of your gut. I can stop it being leaky. But if you keep swallowing razor blades, which are lectins, you'll just slice it right back open.
Gundry notes that proper preparation of certain foods can reduce lectin content to safe levels.
The more you stay away from grain products, except sorghum and millet, the more you use pressure-cooked beans, and there's several companies like Eden and Jovial that pressure-cook their beans, and the more you peel and de-seed tomatoes and peppers, and even white potatoes, the better you're going to do.
In addition to paying attention to the bacteria in our gut, Dr. Gundry recommends us to maintain good oral health.
We know there's strong association between certain bacteria in the mouth and developing brain fog and dementia. Because if you think about it, the mouth and nose is right next to the brain.
He recommends we regularly brush, floss, and visit the dentist. Finally, don't forget the bacteria on our skin.
Our skin has over 700 different species of bacteria. In fact, every orifice that communicates with the outside world has its own species of bacteria.
He recommends cleaning our bodies with regular soap and water, but not stripping them of all bacteria.
One of the worst things you can do is use antibacterial soaps.
So, as we've consistently reported, all bacteria is not bad. And the latest science reveals while only some can do harm, others are quite helpful for maintaining a healthy body and mind. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Some helpful tips. Thanks, Lori. Coming up, you've heard of the California gold rush. Now, Texas has its own take. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a golden opportunity to set a record, and wouldn't you know, it just happens to be in the state of Texas where everything is bigger, including the largest golden retriever meetup in the city of Bee Cave. Thousands participated in activities ranging from a toy run, a golden retriever race, and an Air Bud look-alike contest. A local dog photographer organized the event. Now in its third year, all of the proceeds from tickets go directly to a local rescue called Gold Ribbon Rescue.
This was a spectacle. People were just eager to be around the joy that is golden retrievers.
Well, one of the main goals for this meetup was to raise $15,000 for Gold Ribbon Rescue. Not only did they surpass those expectations, it was also one of the largest fundraisers the charity has ever had. And congratulations to them. What a cute, charitable cause. Well, thank you for watching this edition of Faith Nation. We hope to see you back here again tomorrow night. Good night.